What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader, also known as John, coming back to you with another video. And just a heads up, I am not going to be on for a while, probably 2 weeks or so. Family travel and just work. I looked at my schedule and I'm like, oh my God, I am not going to be on the YouTube channel for a while. But the mailman just dropped off a really cool item, and there's a video that I've been wanting to do. So I thought, why not do it before I'm not going to be on for a while. What I received in the mail today is really cool. This is a non-sonic welded, unpainted Lily Letty Paplu. And so this has never been assembled. This is truly an overstock figure. It's unpainted, as you can see. And then, you know, it's unassembled. So all of the legs, all of the little arms, and all that kind of stuff are here. And you guys have seen, just as you saw in my last video, a number of my non-sonic welded figures that I just got back from CAS. Why does my camera do this to me? I can't get it to focus. Focus, buddy. But anyway, this is an example of the non-sonic welded figures that I got back from CAS a week or two ago, and we just talked about them in my last video. And so this is what they look like after grading. Well, I thought it would be helpful for folks who may want to collect these, and there's probably none of you out there that actually care about these things except for me, but in the event you do want to start collecting these non-sonic welded figures, there's a couple of things that you need to look out for. And I've got a really good example of now a non-sonic welded overstock figure. This is a true non-sonic welded figure. And then I've been holding on to this one for a while. This is a PBP hard torso Hoth Stormtrooper that is a weak weld. And the reason I got it for fairly cheap from a buddy of mine, and the reason that I wanted to hold on to that, or the reason I wanted it, is because I wanted to do a video on non-sonic welded versus weak welded figures. Weak welded figures are basically figures that have gone through the that have gone through the sonic welding process and are just like these, the ones that we know and love, all the Kenner figures, Lily Letty, whatever. You know, every figure that has been on store shelves, for example, has gone through the sonic welding process and is held together with, you know, the highly controlled, highly, you know, high levels of sound to weld these two pieces together. And, but sometimes that process doesn't happen great, and the figure falls apart, which is what the case is with this PBP. These PBP Stormtroopers are known for falling apart. They're really, really fragile sonic welds for whatever reason. Now, I've got a more obvious example than most, but some weak welds are very difficult to tell the difference between a weak weld and a true non-sonic welded overstock, like my Paplu here. Some of you may not care about any of that, you know, and that's fine. But if you want to get one and have it graded by collector archive services, like this one here, they will not grade weak welded figures, and for good reason, because basically all it is a figure where the sonic weld is not held up over time and it's fallen apart. That's all it is. Now, it still looks cool. They'll still put it in these cases, and they'll still archive what it is, but they won't assign a grade to it. And I've got several like that I just liked enough that I was like, you know, let's go ahead and get them archived so they'll look cool, and we'll have a label so it shows what they are, but they won't receive a grade. Well, I've kind of moved away from that because I don't want to, you know, I don't want to spend money on getting these things nicely encased unless they're true non-sonic welded figures. But you know, this is an example of one that's a weak weld. Now, what does it mean, sonic weld versus non-sonic weld? Well, let's take a look at a true non-sonic weld, which is what this Paplu is, as I mentioned. And where you need to look, if you are a buyer, you see where all the connection points are on this torso. You see how clean that is? I'm trying to shine it in the light here. But you see how there's no marks on it. There's absolutely no signs that this figure has been put together at all. And it'll look, you know, if it's gone through the sonic weld process and it's fallen apart, it almost looks like dried glue. And I'll show you an example in a second of this PBP Stormtrooper. But I wanted to show you first how clean this is. Now, one thing to keep in mind too, and this is less likely to happen, but if you're buying a non-sonic welded figure that's ungraded, you need to make sure that this torso piece is not broken off. And the reason for, they'll still grade it and grade it for you and assign a grade to it, but it will receive a low grade if that piece is broken off. So it's very important that, you double check that, make sure there's no kind of marks or anything like that. Because a lot of eBay sellers will say non-sonic welded figure for sale, and it's got a really cheap price. Well, the reason is because it's a weak weld. It's not a true non-sonic welded figure like this. A true non-sonic welded figure, even a Kenner, can be very expensive depending on the figure. But especially with Lily Lettys, where Lily Lettys are in high demand, and these overstock unpainted ones are especially in high demand. I won't go into what I paid for this one, but I can tell you that it was not cheap. All right, to get an unpainted Lily Letty figure like this, they're very expensive. Here's the other torso piece. You can see where that middle piece fits in there, but you can see again. I'm trying to zoom in really close so you guys can take a look at it. But you see how clean that is. There's absolutely no signs that this thing was ever assembled, and the fact that it's unpainted too is a good sign too. If you come across and you'll see Kenners that are the same way, that are unpainted, but. Another sign is that you'll see a lot of wear around the legs. If the legs are loose like this, you see how clean that is. There's no wear around it. So this is a good example. I think I've beaten a dead horse at this point. That's a really good example of a true non-sonic welded figure. Well, what does a weak weld look like? Again, this is a very, very obvious example. Some examples of weak weld figures are not as obvious, so keep that in mind if you're looking to buy some of these. But here is a very obvious example of a weak weld. You see all that weld junk that's around the corners there, and especially down here, you can really see where. Let's see if I can get it to focus. I'm sorry. There you go. You see all of that damage down there. It's where you mostly see the damage is right here. You see all that kind of extra gunk, all that gunk right there where my thumb is. Down here. Even over here, you can kind of see some residue, all that residue on here, and there's usually residue up here at the top. And so this is and also the middle piece is broken off on this one, which I didn't know when I got it, but never mind, it doesn't matter to me because I wanted to get this just to show an example of what these look like before grading. And oftentimes they have lots of numbers and things and different kind of codes for the internal factories. But I think it's important. This is a very obvious example of a weak weld. Now, some of the weak welds, like I said, are not as obvious. So just keep that in mind. If you have a question as to whether it's a weak weld or a non-sonic welded, look at the price, number one. If the price is still high and you're not sure, then don't buy it. I made that mistake early on when I started collecting these. I bought some that I thought were non-sonic welds, and I paid too much for them, and they ended up being weak welds. So, but, now I know what to look for, and I'm not rushing into a purchase. Here's the other piece. Let's see if we can get a clear shot here. See, this one's not nearly as bad as the other half of the torso. Let's see if I can get it to focus again. But you can still see residue around there. Lots of residue right here where my thumb is. But this is a much cleaner piece than the other half. Even though there's still, some signs that this has been sonically welded where my thumb is. So... Again, just keep all that in mind. Even this arm, for example, it's got signs where this has been in use before. So it's not nearly as clean as, see, this is another one right here. You can see just a lot of wear around it. It's just a sign that this is not a true non-sonic welded. So I was saving this piece specifically for this video. I'm probably the only one that cares about these kind of figures, but I just thought it was important to at least know what to look for in the event that you make the mistake, like I have, of going down the path of buying these things, because they're very expensive for the most part. You can get Kenners for cheap, but for the most part, they're very expensive. They're really cool, though, once they're graded. I mean, I love them. You've seen all those examples that I have. I just love the way they look, and it's a nice kind of mini focus for me now, and I've got a bunch more coming back, and some of them were early purchases, so I don't know if they're going to be sonic welds or non-sonic welds. We'll have to wait and see what they say, because they were less obvious than the PBP Stormtrooper that I showed you. But anyway, this is going to be a really cool one. This is another one that's going to be going out to grading hopefully at the end of next month. But it just, these Lily Letty non-sonic welded overstock are just so cool. And hey, one other thing I wanted to point out, I know this video is running long as usual, but one other thing I wanted to point out, if you don't like the way this looks in the case, Collector Archive Services has an updated version of this where they display the head and each torso piece separately, like this. So the case would look something, instead of looking like this, the case would look like this. And then the arms and the legs would all be separated. So essentially, instead of putting it together, the torso and the head together, like you see in my example, they literally splay every single piece out, both front and back torso and everything else out. Now, the reason I didn't do that is because they take up too much room. The cases are about 3 times the size of this one. And I don't have the display space in my house, given everything else I've got, to display a bunch of these. If I only had 1 or 2, that'd be different, but I've got like 15 of them between the ones I have here and in grading, and I've got to keep the space down. And me personally, I like the way this looks better than the splayed out version. I like the fact that it still kind of looks like a figure, but it's just weird enough that it's going to collect people's, catch people's eye, and they're going to ask about it. But if you don't like the way this looks and you want to show off the back, show off all the different backs in here where a lot of this writing is, you see where all the different writing and stamp numbers, there's people that are all into that kind of stuff and they want to be able to show that. Me personally, I don't care about it. I just want it to look really cool in the case and not take up too much space. Okay, I think I've talked enough about non-sonic weld versus weak weld, but I hope that you found that helpful. I wish I had found a video like this when I started collecting them, because it would have saved me about 300 bucks on stupid purchases. So anyway, thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. And oh yeah, well, you won't be talking to me soon. It'll probably be a couple weeks at least. But I definitely promise you that when I get back, there are going to be some awesome things to look at. I've got some really cool stuff coming. UKG graded stuff. I got my shipment coming back from CAS hopefully soon. So don't unsubscribe to the channel, because I really do have some neat stuff coming in the next month or so. Thanks very much again for watching.